Nobody's asking questions. Oh, there we go.
Well, we're here for the Strength Camp show. And Chris Barner's talking about Texas.
Yeah. So we go and we pull into this place, and it's like the windows are like the ones in the bank teller where you can see it's like that thick. I'm thinking in my mind, where the hell am I at right now? And I've been to some hood in around here, and the dude, he like opens the thing, talks to us, gets our room, and then when we finally go, he goes, "Hey, make sure you pull up your car right next to your window." So like off the curb, onto the grass, right next to our window. He was like, your shit's basically gonna get jacked. After he just took my money. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm dead tired. I drove from there to Tucson all the way to Houston. Then we're walking up to the actual thing. Am I mic on?
Yeah, I'm just double checking.
We're walking up to the room, and you know, there's alleys and there's doors on both sides. And the first one we see is this dude with tattoos, gang tattoos all over his face. And me, Byron, and Bracky were just looking around like, what the hell do we get ourselves into? And the shit was just wild. We were there for about an hour, 2 hours, rested our head, got up and took off again and drove all the way back to Tampa. So that's my experience with Texas.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. We were about an hour outside of Austin. For these of you guys who are just catching up, we're talking about Texas because I just got off the plane from Austin, Texas, where we had our grounding camp, and it was outside of Austin, an hour outside of Austin. We were really just like in the boondocks, but I loved it, being able to see the mountains. I even took a hike up the hills. I could look over and saw the mountain ranges or the hill ranges and watching the sunset. I love nature more than anything. I think when I travel, I said this to Colleen when we were in the city afterwards, I'm not really impressed with cities. I'm not impressed. What I'm really impressed with is nature. So even when we got to Austin, they got something called the Green Belt, where you can leave the city and go through all these walking trails. And we spent most of our time just looking for nature to get in touch with.
That's what's up. So so you're obviously in the country of that side of things. Were you able to interact with the people in the actual, were you secluded at your actual retreat center?
We were the only ones at the retreat center. Yeah, I want to say we were secluded, meaning that like it was outside of the city. It was just like plopped right there between some mountains and hills. And there was no one else at the retreat center. So it was real intimate. It was beautiful. It was wonderful. Those of you guys who are following grounding camp stuff, Danny will have a video up another couple weeks or so, just to give you some of the highlights. I want to give a big shout out to many of our Strength Camp ambassadors that showed up there. Quan was there.
That's what's up.
Our new friend Arthur from Phoenix, he's going to be opening up a grounding camp there. We have a couple guys, North Carolina, Michael Niemczek. So at grounding camp, which is really awesome, we had probably about half a dozen Strength Camp ambassadors. And while they're there, it's really about becoming the strongest version of themselves so they could just spill over and take that power into Strength Camp when they open up, or their current members as they have them. Oh, in fact, also too, one of our grounding camp members who has been coming, this is like his third time, actually has agreed to fund another strength camper. I'll tell you more about it later though, but like when the heart opens up and these guys start sharing with one another, he wants to invest in another grounding camper's strength camp. So yeah, it's a beautiful thing. Like the community's just growing, man. Strength camp, grounding camp, one love.
Love it, love it. Hey, so just because Elliott just got back off the plane, I myself was not prepared this day. We didn't really kind of get to gather questions from the last one. So what we figured is, I got Instagram open right now. If you guys are watching, this is Instagram live. We'll go ahead and take questions pertaining to gym business, strength camp, anything training related. We'll go ahead and start to answer those questions. I know you got.
And I've got Facebook open, so yeah, we'll just do it like that.
So anybody with questions, you can go ahead.
Well, we'll start with number one right here by Darryl Watson. He says, best piece of advice for a trainer coach looking to set up their own gym training facility.
Okay.
Join Strength Camp, right? Why recreate the wheel? We have the systems, we have the branding, and you have the support. When you work with Strength Camp, you don't have to think about all that stuff. You don't need advice. You got personal coaching from Chris and I. So best advice, I mean, hands down, I'm sorry to put it out there this way. I am biased, but I know you're going to be successful when you join Strength Camp, the Strength Camp family. Not only that, you got the support of the other Strength Camp ambassadors, and these guys are always giving them each other tips, high fives, and advice on, you know, what worked for them and so forth. So that's my number one. Join Strength Camp.
Absolutely. Absolutely. To add to it, to open, what do you say, to open up his own?
Yeah, what's your number one advice for a training coach looking to start your own gym?
I mean, if you're coaching at a place right now, obviously the steps to take that everybody will say, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Strength camp, I mean, when you join forces, that's you know what's you cut 10, 20 years in a fraction of the time.
Yeah.
You're able to have a network. I always say, obviously, network with certain people, and you want to have higher level people who are a couple steps ahead of you and being able to support you in that role. Beyond that, you know, obviously, if you're training people now, you're obviously going to want to put a certain percentage aside. This is just common practice. You know, put a certain percentage aside to start being able to save up for your facility, or you obviously bring out loans and capital if you go that route. Something that you did, you went and pulled your first facility out on credit card.
Yeah.
You were able to come out on credit card, pay for the first couple months. I always say, people, a lot of question I get is how much should you have? Common practice that I often preach to most people is obviously you want to know how much it's going to cost to get into it. So each landlord in each state is different. So you're going to want to know how much it is to put down. So sometimes they'll want first, last, and maybe some kind of security deposit, something of that nature. Sometimes if you extend with a longer lease, you can start to negotiate there. So instead of a 1 year, you can do like a 5 year, and then they might give you a month or two free. Really what you want to do is you want to set yourself up financially so that the first 3 to 6 months is already taken care of, no matter how much you start with. So as long as you have that in the bank, that gives you at least that freedom of mind to go ahead and start off with those 3 to 6 and start getting clientele in. But you should have enough clientele. I'll just finish with this. You should have enough clientele. If you're a coach right now, you should have enough clientele where you're at to be able to transplant that clientele to cover your overhead of the new place that you're opening up. And I think that's a huge mistake some people make, is because they think it's kind of like building and everybody will come, and that's fine. You know, we did that. We've done that constantly. But from a little bit more conservative approach for somebody out there not understanding them or their situation, have those 3 to 6 months and make sure that your clientele can cover overhead right now. Because there's going to be expenses, there's going to be things that happen that you don't even foresee. When we started the big facility, there was costs associated with opening that up that I never even thought about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's things such as like the stuff I was doing with the city. You know what I mean? There was headaches even switching it from a warehouse to an assembly.
Right.
You know, with no parking, getting the proper signage and stuff like that, getting the proper codes, setting up the fire stuff. You know, we had to do something where we have stairs, we have a loft. One of our biggest bills going in was creating a high enough 2-code banister with the arm thing, because we're switching it to assembly. So there's so many little things that you don't foresee, but what you can take care of is, hey, I know how much it costs monthly. I'm going to make sure I have 3 to 6 months built out, and then I have enough clientele to transplant over into, hey, I have 10 clients, that covers my overhead right there. That's just kind of like a safe way to look at it, I guess you could say.
Yeah. So while you were talking, I was just peeking to make sure that we had something to wrap on next. And we got one question here. I can't pronounce the name, but it goes, protein consumption, over protein consumption can cause any problems. It's said about kidney damage, which I don't believe. What do you think? So this is interesting too, because anytime you start lifting, and we're all lifters here, right? I mean, otherwise, you know, why would you be following Elliott Hulse? You learn basics as far as bodybuilding are concerned, and I know you and I did from reading like bodybuilding magazines. And I remember at one point I read something that had me believing that I need to eat like 300 grams of protein to be huge. Now I will tell you, when I was in college and I sort of took that advice a little bit by bumping my protein up, I couldn't get 300 grams. I did notice that I was getting stronger faster, right? So there is something to be said for it. But at the same time, I am of the conviction that overeating is really a big part of our issue. On our way to Texas, I watched a documentary on fasting. And for those of you guys who have followed Lean Hybrid Muscle, you know there's a fasting program in there. I've been doing intermittent fasting for many, many years. And I got to tell you, on and off, I feel better, I look better, I think better, I perform better when I am fasting. And it has a lot to do with the fact that when the body is not in that process of breaking down food and utilizing the nutrients that are associated with it, it goes into like a cleansing process where it starts breaking down and scraping out and getting rid of old cells that aren't necessary, undigested food particles in the digestive tract that are just kind of hanging out there because we're constantly being refed and refed. And I kept having this thought over and over again throughout the time that we were in Texas that that really culturally food has just become entertainment. You know, we've gotten to such a place where food is not really a necessity for most of us. You know, if you're watching this on a Wi-Fi connection, you probably have access to food. Food, rather than being something that sustains our life, now has become something that deteriorates our life. So I'm of the mindset and opinion at this point that like it's over food consumption. Macronutrients are going to vary based on the individual and what it is that your goals are, but just the fact that we eat so goddamn much, we are suffering as a race of human beings on this planet.
I'd have to agree with you there. And one thing that you know, I follow pretty much a coach and follow macro-based diet. Shout out to Relentless and those guys over there. They've always helped me out, and I am consuming a higher. And one thing I was working with him with towards the holidays was, you know, I just want to be a little bit more intuitive. Like, you know, I want to eat when I'm hungry, and that's how we've always kind of done it, unless food was scarce and obviously you had to hunt all day and, you know, obviously fuel up when you could, and usually that typically was at night, so that's kind of modeling after the intermittent fasting if you think about it in that sense. But, you know, one thing I noticed was it was definitely being able to go back to a little bit more raw foods. And what I noticed is when I did that is the consumption obviously decreased. You know, the amount that I was actually focused on hitting decreased. And it was amazing to me, not so much how much the weight fluctuated with myself, but more or less the intangible or the tangible things that you wouldn't think of. You know, your hair, your skin, your nails, you know what I'm saying, your sleep patterns, just things like that. Well, I'm very aware of myself, and we always talk about getting to a certain level where you can kind of standardize a lot of things around your life, meaning what time you wake up, what time you go to bed, things like that. So when you have a lot of discipline in your life, you could start to pay attention to those little things going on. And when you do throw your body a curveball like that, and let's say you're eating 3,000 calories and all of a sudden you're eating 1,200 a day. You know, somebody out there might say 1,200 calories, that's crazy. But it's crazy how much I was able to operate and be productive within work still. And it was just a shift from, instead of quantity to quality and lowering, and I'd have to agree with you 100% there. You know, and I do believe, and you know, obviously we've spoken before, but both my parents have had cancer. My father's going through it now, and I think one of the craziest things is, as you see something like cancer, a disease like cancer, is the increase it's had throughout the past 100 years in our population. And obviously we've introduced so many different things within our society, but one thing that has become plentiful and kind of bastardized is our relationship to food. And I just think our relationship to food has become such a what's the word I'm looking for? Commodity? It's become something. It's become such a business as opposed to something we do. You know, like when's the last time a lot of these guys out here? It's like I've gotten into cooking this year, and it's because of my relationship with food. I want to go back to how my father did it, where it was, you know, you had to go to the garden, pull certain things, and be able to prepare that evening. You know, and I think that that's just becoming a lost art. So it's kind of almost keeping that tradition alive, but also knowing and being aware enough of the sense of, you know, how we should be treating food and how we should be thinking about food as opposed to a business and, you know, this and
You should check out the documentary. It's on Amazon. It's called The Science of Fasting.
Science of Fasting.
Tremendous amount of research was done in Soviet Russia. Volumes and volumes of research that is conclusive and disease after disease that were healed.
Yeah.
But after the Soviet Union collapsed, all this research kind of went underground because there was no one else funding it. The government was funding it at the time. And one of the big segments in this documentary was about cancer. And you know, I'm not speaking as an expert, I'm just relaying what was in this. Amongst the fact within this research that the individuals who fasted were able to heal themselves of various forms of cancer. Those who were on chemotherapy or those who were you know, taking medication for cancer, when they fasted, the medication worked, not only worked better, but their cells that weren't cancerous protected themselves even better. So it was like when the patients were fasting and doing chemotherapy, the chemotherapy was more targeted right to the cancer cells, and the rest of the body was protected.
That's wild.
Yeah, so, you know, again, I'm just saying, you go look at the documentary, go look at the research. You know, I'm not here to make anybody believe anything. I just find these things fascinating.
Absolutely.
And fasting is one of those things that have been around for 1,000 years. We've healed ourselves with fasting. You know, and the documentary goes into the history of fasting also, too. The thing is, with fasting, if fasting becomes a lifestyle and a means of healing ourselves, 2 giant industries, 3 really if you count transportation, take a plummet. Processed food manufacturing, right? Food is a commodity, like you were saying before. The medical industry, pharmaceuticals, right? Boom, take a plummet. And I say transportation, oil, because, you know, it's crazy. I live in Florida, and sometimes, which is known for Florida oranges, I'm eating fucking oranges, and on the bag it says it comes from California. What's that? Right?
Yeah.
So, you know, all the oil that's spent, so it goes against the economy in a way, you know.
It really is. I mean, those are 3 of the biggest.
Yeah.
You know what I
they
mean?
all take a plummet if human beings take back our power and learn how to heal ourselves, particularly through fasting.
Right. And just to add to that, you know, one thing I felt was pretty awesome, and just to relay into the fasting was, you know, we've substantially taken certain foods out of our diets that have started to really kind of, you know, because the whole thing was salt and sugar. It's like, you know, you're talking about processed foods and everything like that, and corn, especially in the United States.
Yeah.
I mean, corn is, high fructose corn syrup essentially makes up almost every little ingredient when it comes to processing foods and stuff. So there's so much associated with that, and you know, one thing I read when I was doing some research for my father was like, when's the last time we actually enjoyed or had stuff that's actually bitter? You know, that's the opposite of salt.
Our palate has become trained.
Exactly. And so when it's become trained by sugar, the opposite of that is something very bitter. So when you take stuff that's bitter out, you're taking key ingredients out of your body. And one of them happens to be, you know, things such as, and this is just, like I said, I'm no expert in this whatsoever. I can just share from experience and the research I was looking at. You know, and I'm by no means, like I said, in that. But when I started to research some of the stuff that was bitter, and some of the foods that were bitter, and some of those things that we've been taking out of our diet for a long time, we took a lot of certain seeds out of our diet. And what I noticed is, obviously going a little bit step further, there were certain things that can help cure diseases and cancer and stuff of that nature with that in there. And so it was funny it was pretty crazy to add some of that into my father's diet. And he has a terminal cancer, and they're basically coming back. Now, obviously this was paired with chemotherapy, but that's a whole nother stance to get into. But one thing is pretty wild is they didn't expect him to live through his treatment. And the only difference that he added into that was that. So for the doctor to say it's a miracle that you're sitting here right now, and for him to be able to add a certain thing like that. Now, obviously, there's so many different factors and variables, don't get me wrong. But it's fascinating to start to kind of go down that alley and start to do, you know, dig up what we used to do compared to what we're doing now, and the diseases developed in between. You know what I mean? No, for sure.
Yeah, very cool. So let's take a look here. Maybe we have a couple questions.
Are they becoming a Rasta or nah?
Am I becoming a Rasta? It depends, man. Depends on your definition. Maybe. Maybe. So this is a good question. I don't know if we even have an answer for it, but it kind of is on topic. Alex Markham wants to know when the next business seminar is. Do we have a strength camp, warehouse gym business
yes.
clinic coming up soon?
So essentially we'll be running 2. And actually that's what we were going to meet on, but I'll kind of just share with you kind of some things that we have in the works. We're planning on probably doing about 2 to 3 this year. We'll be having one, skipping the first quarter. We'll hopefully have one the second, third, and fourth quarter. You know, the 2 big ones that I'm thinking of now is we'll definitely do a very intimate one where we do it at the gym and kind of walk everybody through. That's what we did this last year. And then the previous year, we're in talks with, you know, being able to provide some kind of great, same along the same guidelines of teaching warehouse gym business and gym business in general, but also attaching it to a strongman show. So we can kind of, you know, do a joint entertainment and kind of have a weekend, kind of like the World Summit we did that one year, 2 years ago, where we can invite a lot of people. So the first day will be very focused on coaches and gym business owners and people wanting to own their own gym. And then, you know, the next day we'll be able to provide value with some kind of talks, and then being able to cap it off with some kind of a great expo, great competition where there's going to have multiple outlets, powerlifting, strongman, stuff like that. And we'll further discuss. But there's
I like it. You know, I've always said that the best I was as a coach was when I was competing as an athlete.
Absolutely.
You know, there's nothing like pushing yourself and knowing how far you can go, so much so that you're willing to push your athletes just a little bit more, whether it be in the gym or discipline with their diet and lifestyle. So as we are being speaking about coaches, as we are being the strongest version of ourselves, we have greater insights as to what it takes and what our clients can do to be the strongest version of themselves. Otherwise, it's theoretical. It's hypothetical. If you're training athletes, I say it's in your best interest to at least be in some form of competition.
Hell yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so those of you guys who are coming down for the Strength Camp Business Summit, that may be something that you want to try out, Strongman. So,
I got a question here. What's up, brother? Do you have any suggestions how to train and educate young kids who are not athletic but often very clumsy? Is it possible that this is the reason they don't have sense of rhythm?
Well, the very first pattern that usually gets interrupted in children is the cross-crawl pattern, because most parents are so ambitious for their kids to walk that they don't let them go through. And here's the thing, when you go through that actual crawling phase, there is a psychological development that's associated with it. So not only does the nervous system begin to be more coordinated in its cross patterns, like even when we walk, when we sprint, whatever it is that we're doing, it's usually in a cross pattern, but the reptilian, reptilian is when we're sliding on our bellies, the mammalian phase of development that's associated with being parallel to the floor but picking your head up, also strengthens the core, strengthens the extensors, but develops the psychosocial stage that is that's only available if the child is given ample opportunity to walk around on all fours. The work done by Weston A. Price, who his work has been tremendous in terms of nutrition. His book Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. He went around and studied indigenous societies worldwide to see what kind of foods they were eating, to figure out why they're so healthy, why they don't have cancer. One of the things that he noted in many of the societies was that children up to the age of 4 and so they'd spend a lot of time crawling around. So if you get one of these kids that are really clumsy and really they have no athletic ability, or you're really trying to get them to be a little bit more coordinated, go right back to primal patterns. That primal pattern literally be getting them to slide on their belly, like in the army, that army crawl. If they can't do that, how could you expect them to run? That cross crawl pattern on the floor is primary to sprinting and jumping. So just get their little uncoordinated asses crawling around the gym, and I tell you, it will translate tremendously into the rest of their athletic ability.
I agree. Yeah, integrating them, and like you said, if you're getting them in a high school level, one that I come and get is these guys who are in high school. A lot of them that you'll see is usually they went through some kind of a growth spurt, so they're kind of like, you know, gangly, they're these awkward athletes. And I agree, the approach becomes, working more of the sling systems, being able to go back to integrating both halves of the body. You know, obviously one half of the brain controls the opposite and the other half controls the opposite. So being able to conduct movements where even something as simple as single leg toe touches, integrating the body through many different forms and trying to make it useful, as opposed to very angular. You know, a lot of guys want to initially start off with things such as like thinking you just need to pound away at strength off top, where it's like they haven't really built the stabilization and integration to be able to get into that. So I think it's extremely regressing it. Obviously, to sell as a coach, if you're taking a high school athlete who's trying to play basketball at a high level and you have them bear crawling, now obviously there's going to be a level of you having to sell yourself, and it's just being aware of what medicine, right? Because exercise becomes the medicine. How to program that medicine in of what they really need, but also giving them the sugar, right? And giving them the little cherry on top that they need to make them feel like they did something that day. So I think it's a balance, and it's also a matter of educating and going along through there. But yeah, the majority of your program should be back to integrating, you know, some form of dynamic stabilization. And
at Strength Camp, that's what we do with all of our people, all of our athletes, all of our members, everybody that trains at Strength Camp or any of our Strength Camp ambassador locations. Using the Strength Camp method, we have a dynamic flexibility warm-up routine that goes through all of these patterns. It's funny, but also fascinating to see how many people come in and they can't do simple things like skipping, you know, or running backwards or side shuffling. These are just basic body weight movements that a human being should be able to do, but because of culture, because of the repetitive patterns of sitting and standing, they can't do it. But within a few weeks, you know, they pick up those patterns. And here's the thing too, again, even with adults, it's been proven that exercise and things like playing chess and checkers and things that are mind and body related build the brain. They live longer, they think better. So an adult, you know, 38 years old, who hasn't exercised in a long time, you get them to start doing some of the dynamic flexibility stuff that we do, cross-crawling things that we do, their whole life improves. They think better, their relationships are better, they start having awakenings, if you will. I truly believe that spiritual awakening starts in the body. That's why we do grounding. Begin with the body. And exercise is the way of awakening.
Absolutely. You know, and you think about the education and fitness cultures in general, while they do help us in a lot of certain ways, they do a disservice to us in a lot of ways. You know, when you think of education, I mean, even just from a standpoint of just sitting, I mean, obviously sitting alone is not conducive. It doesn't help the human physiology and you know, who we are as physical human beings, and then as the fitness, you know, this whole the chroming carpet that we have in our society and in that culture. There, you don't find a mirror in our gym. You know what I mean? We find mirrors in and there's nothing against it, because obviously there's people in these gyms that train. But when you take somebody who's never done anything before, everything they do is obviously looking in the mirror, and they're furthering the patterns of what they were doing earlier. So it's kind of like it's hurting them. So, you know, being able to move people in multiple planes of motion, and that's what's been able to, you know, and we always talk about the intangibles that we're able to serve our people with. You know, obviously you see the pictures of the 20 pounds lost, which obviously grows their confidence and their you know, their mental game, everything. But what we always get a rise in is that person who wasn't able to do that thing with their kid, or wasn't able to you know, overcome something, or you do those intangibles that you can't really measure, but they know within themselves it's unique to themselves at their home, or in their quality of life. And you know, I think that it's definitely one thing that people should be adding to the regimen.
So I'm over here on Facebook. Shout out 111 on Facebook. Well, here's a fairly basic one, and we can wrap on this by Matthew Redfield. I'm currently 19, overweight, want to lose about 30 pounds. I weigh 230 pounds. How do I do so? Well, Matthew, here's the thing, bro. It's almost too simple. In fact, we live in a society that wants to complicate things. First of all, you have all the information you will ever need on how to do that. That's really the long and short of it. Doesn't matter if I say it, Chris says it, you read it in Google. How to do it is there. It's not about the how. It really is about becoming a disciple of the strongest version of yourself. Disciple is a word that it originates with discipline. That means choosing what you're going to do and doing it every day, whether you feel like it or not. I would say the easiest way, the first way to begin, is to eliminate any other beverage but water. Like, if you're trying to lose weight and you drink juice, even fucking Gatorade. Gatorade has tricked the shit out of us into believing that, like, if you drink Gatorade, it's good for you. Gatorade is full of sugar, preservatives, and all kinds of chemicals. Yeah. If I want to lose weight, I don't drink Gatorade. You drink water, and no questions about it. You want to give me, whatever it is, Powerade, I don't care what it is. No, drink water. Number 2, walk. Like, it doesn't have to be that magnificent. It doesn't have to be that hard. It's not that complicated. Get up and move. A lot of people, they just don't walk. I would say if you drank water, I leave it at those 2. Those are my 2 tips for losing 30 pounds. You want to lose 30 pounds and you're 30 pounds overweight, switch to drinking only water and walk an hour every day on an empty stomach. Bro, you lose 30, you'll think it's fucking magic. It's just too simple that people don't do it. They want something complicated. It's funny, I was at the airport just now, and there was a whole bunch of people wearing the same kind of like color shirt, and it said something to the effect of, "It really works," right? And I'm peeking over, I'm like, what the fuck are they talking about? What really works? It was the MLM. And I saw, a little booklet with one of them, and it was like this thing that you wrap around your belly, and it's about losing weight. The thing is, all these people were fat. How you wearing a shirt that says it works, and this shit is supposed to make your belly thin, and you fat? Yeah. Because they're all up in their head. They're all conceptual. They're all idealistic and not grounded in reality. That's like sick doctors giving you advice. This world is so fucking backwards. We got to take a look at what is actual rather than what is ideological. Because most people are up in the goddamn sky and detached completely from what is truth. Basic things: drinking water, walking, sleeping, getting some sunshine. It's not magic.
I agree.
It works.
Somebody else mentioned that about here.
Well, I got one here from Billy Balan. Yep, he's asking again. All right, Billy, I see your question. He says, Elliott, talk about depersonalization and grounding tips. And I think about what I just said has a lot to do with it. Is the fact that we are trained to ignore our bodies, to rise up out of our bodies, particularly boys, because we're not allowed to feel. When you were young and you hurt yourself and it's just not okay to cry, and it's just been a part of our social situation. And it's also biological too, I truly believe. We were the ones out there doing a lot of the hunting and whatnot, and we'd probably get hurt. And if you're getting hurt out there and you start crying, it probably wouldn't be too, super saber-toothed tiger will find you or some shit. But what we're really hoping for in this day and age is not an ascension where we leave our bodies by becoming so spiritual that we have no grounding whatsoever, but really descension right back into our hearts. I would say one of the very first ways to begin reacclimating yourself to the sensation in your body through deep breathing and movement is dance. In a completely erratic, irrational, nonlinear way. Because everything that we do, first of all, the ego comes in, so it's like, so how am I supposed to dance? And then, I'm on this topic because we just had grounding camp. Or who's looking at me? Am I doing this right? All of those are bars against your own sensation. I say put on depending on your mood, if you're happy, you're glad, you're sad, you're angry, put on the music that's associated with where you're at and trust the emotion that rises in your body. Just be with it, you know what I'm saying? So as far as depersonalization is concerned, I could go on and on about the various different practices that have established that in our society. Porn being one of them, you know what I'm saying? People have become so, if you're addicted to pornography, you are more attached to the idea of a woman than an actual warm vagina. And that becomes real uncomfortable when you're faced with one. Right? And it also becomes one of these situations where the ego gets so involved that, like, if you're watching pornography and the sex is always some kind of acrobatic shit, and you're really bumping and grinding, bumping uglies with someone, with a girl, you come to realize that, you know, in reality, it's not like it was in the movie. You know, what a shame.
Yeah.
Even with the movies that we watch, like, you know, I took my children to watch Wonder Woman a couple months ago. Sensation everywhere. All kinds of shit is blowing up. Cars are flipping over. The girl in Wonder Woman, I don't know who she was, but she doesn't look like she lifts at all. She was skinny fat, and she's jumping from building to building and stuff. It just detaches people from what's truth, what's real. And then when we go out into the regular world, it just looks gray and boring. It looks, we're just numb.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I don't watch any movies, and I don't watch porn. I fucking walk in the street.
Yeah, you're there. It's the reality. I like that. And to be honest with you, at least from my experience, girls don't really like what's portrayed in porn anyway. Like they don't want the, you know, they like you to be there with them. They like you to grind on them, things like that. Make love to them, be sensual with them, be intimate with them. You know what I mean? The whole, like, they're doing it for camera angles and for you to get off. That's not really necessarily what she wants. So then when you're faced with it, it's not really, you know, then you all of a sudden got to deal with your own bullshit because you thought now you're the king dick because that's what you learned in the movie. Now you got your whole shit backwards. Yeah. Now your confidence is lost on the next one. Yeah, that just goes down a bad route.
Welcome to sex camp. Yep.
Yeah.
I love getting off topic.
Yeah.
Is there going to be a strength camp? You know, here's the thing. I get a lot of these ones, and people will DM me on this one too. Elliot, when's a strength camp coming to Copenhagen? When's a strength camp coming to Bali? When's a strength camp coming to... Look, a strength camp's going to come there when you open it. If you lift and you're wanting a strength camp, there is nothing under the sun stopping you from going to strengthcamp.com and clicking that button that says open your own strength camp. If you're really wanting a strength camp, that means you're the one. Don't let any doubts, fears, or hesitation get in your way from being a successful warehouse gym business owner and providing your city, your community with what I believe is the best service on earth. You're going to be helping your entire community become the strongest version of themselves. Why wait for somebody else to do it? Make it your calling.
Absolutely. That's many questions. How do you escape a negative household? You want to take that?
Nope, but we got one here that says, I want to walk onto the University of Hawaii for football. I think that one might be a good one to chew up. I'm 20 years old. I'm from Pennsylvania. I know that the hardest thing I'll ever do, I haven't even played high school football. I know I can do it. I played high school basketball and travel ball. I played football in junior high, but I didn't play in high school. I'm 6 foot. 195, grandfather lives in Hawaii, trying to walk on and get a full ride scholarship. I need advice. Well, the very first thing I would say is don't be attached to the outcome. Here's the thing, a lot of times we have a prompting, we have a whispering, we have a sensation that wants us to move in a particular direction, right? Like your heart is telling you, yeah, I want to be in that, go in that direction. That's where I want to be. But for us to, and this is good for this time of year because a lot of people start setting goals, you know, in January. Right. For us to be so specific about, I'm going to play football at the University of Hawaii and I'm going to get a scholarship. Look, I might sound like a naysayer, but it's going to set you up for disappointment. I am all about following your heart, 100%. You're supposed to follow your heart. But follow your heart to the journey, not the destination. If you're being called to Hawaii and you're being called to play football, allow that to show itself to you by you just taking the next step. If the next step is, like you said, you didn't even play football before. You want me to give you advice on walking on a Division I football team and you haven't played football? What kind of fucking advice can I possibly give you? You sound like somebody who wants to follow their heart. Just move in that direction.
Yeah.
You might get to Hawaii and it had nothing to do with football. This happens time and time again. You may be being called to Hawaii and you're trying to rationalize what's in Hawaii by saying maybe I should play football, which you haven't even played football before, so to me it sounds a little off, but it's okay. Go to fucking Hawaii, go get smashed in the face and not make the team, right? And then discover that you were supposed to be there because your grandfather needed you to help him while he developed something that was along the lines of why you're really there, or you meet the love of your life. Guys, I tell you, it's good to have goals, but it's even better to walk in the direction of your dreams and allow it to show itself or reveal itself to you. So look, I've said this to people, and you know, because I'm supposed to be a motivating guy, people get confused when I tell them that their dreams are a bad idea. I say attachment to your dream is the bad idea, not the dream itself. Move towards it. Don't be attached. Allow it to reveal itself to you.
I really like that. And I think that comes from a very aware position. So for instance, when I was at that age, and you told me at 20 years old, when I was doing that for University of Miami, if you would have told me don't be attached to the end result, I would have told you kiss my ass. I'm going to find somebody that does that. So I do believe in an immature state. You need to essentially have some sort of attachment to that result, because that's going to be the driving force that pushes you to there. Now you can look back at your life and say, look at all these goals I set out for myself, and I can see how each one, even though I did achieve it or didn't achieve it, has become a blessing in my life, and I realize who I became. So it's like, it's not so much, obviously, it's like, you know, like you're saying, it's like, yeah, go be an NFL athlete, go be a walk-on and a Division I starter for Hawaii, or, you know, not because to say that you were the quarterback for University of Hawaii, but because of who you had to become to be that person. So hindsight, it's easy to say that. When you're actually in it, it's almost like it's just a permission and having somebody to say, yes, you can do it, get that result, and focus on it, because all the steps that need to be taken. I think one thing that some guys get stifled on or set back with when they're starting off and trying to reach a goal, it's simply their societal surroundings and what they have going on at their home or whatever that situation may be. You need to protect your dreams and your goals. You need to keep them secret. In fact, none of my family knew what I was trying to do when I was trying to play at the University of Miami and then on to the NFL, because I understood the energies that would attack my own goal and my end result in mind. Now I can look back hindsight and say I'm so fortunate to do what I did, because I received my degree. I was able to link up with somebody like you. We were able to run and establish some very successful businesses. We were able to go from here, and I wouldn't change anything one bit. A lot of that, I'm able to appreciate the journey hindsight. So now when I go into a journey in a more mature sense, I'm addicted to the process. I'm loving the process. So I do think there needs to be a shift. So wherever you're at, you know, I think there's a crossover after you get your one big cherry popped. You know, where you have that one goal in mind, where it's like you've lived, you know, somewhere along the line in your adolescence, you kind of, or even your childhood, that you realize. I mean, for us, it was football. It was like when we were kids, it was like, we're going for football. We're going for football. We're going for football. What's the highest level? NFL. That's it. That's it. That's the end result, right? Things start to change. You start to creep up to that high school, and either you start to realize, wow, I can really do this. We've been fortunate enough to have that, and hey, this dream's going to come to fruition. But you know, sometimes what happens, you get to that next stage where it's like, you're still holding on to that end result. So you're starting to kind of finagle any way you can to hold on to whatever that was. I didn't receive a full ride scholarship. So what was the next route? I got to go to JUCO, broke my shoulder. Next thing you know, I'm training with you. Next thing you know, I'm getting preferred walk on. You know what I'm saying? So there's so many different ways to still attach yourself to that end result. Whereas, you know, if I would have said, oh, okay, like, you know, I need to go and, you know, I'm just appreciative of the process, which you are along the way. But that fuel behind me at that immature state was always, what do I have to do? I just need to show up. I just want to run out that tunnel on smoke. So I say get real detailed in your immature sense of what that result is you want. Then once you get that cherry popped of essentially like, okay, I can look hindsight, that's over. That ship is sailed. There's no more schooling for me. I have no more eligibility. I was even trying to file for waivers with the NCAA. But then after that, one thing happened that was very profound in my life. I was able to look at that and be like, wow, look at the man I've become. Look at who I had to become to be able to do that. Look at all the courageous moments I had to have along the way. Think about the time that you drove out to Arizona with $300 to your name. You're sleeping in your car. Those kind of things, you know what I'm saying? And then all of a sudden that's birthed you know, so much confidence, so much courage in me, and that's when I'm able to say, oh, that result-driven me had so much fuel behind it. But now I go into things and I say, when I have a goal, I have that courage, I take that with me, and now I say, gear up, I'm excited to attach to the process and who I'm going to become on the next step of my journey. So I really love that, and I really love the fact of you know, setting something so high that does make you scared, you know, in the process of it. So, you know, for you, somebody in Hawaii, you know, wanting to do this, and if it is, the loftier the better, you know what I mean? Something that's outrageous, don't let anybody else know. Protect your dream from everybody else, and you never know what can come of it and who you're going to become through that.
Okay. Want to take a look?
We're good. I'll see you guys.
How long we got?
Oh, actually, I got to run. I got to pick up the kids from school.
For about 45 minutes.
Oh, really?
Good.
Word. Favorite books? You want to answer that real quick?
Nope. I say write your own book. If you want my favorite book, it's my journal.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
I like that.
So I say we're done.